Hello, Slashies, and welcome to Slash, a horror podcast where we talk about the scares, the screams, and the spooky stuff. My name is Grace.
And my name is Wouter, and today we'll be talking about the 2020 Australian horror film Relic. I was going to say dementia for some reason, because that's what the film is about. Which is a film that we've been talking about for a real long time, I think.
Yeah.
You had seen the trailer, or at least you had read stuff about it, and we thought like, oh, this sounds really cool.
I think I found it on the r/horror, and someone had posted the trailer when it first came out, and it looked really interesting, and I thought it would be right up our alley for just our personal entertainment and the podcast.
So we went into this with certain expectations, and we're going to talk about if those expectations were met. But before we're going to do that, this week, or this episode,
Wouter is going to grace us with the summary. I've had a little bit of some throat issues, and just to save my voice a little bit, Wouter is going to do the summary for this week. And I'm sure he will do an absolute banging job. So thank you, Wouter.
Thank you very much, Grace. Relic is a 2020 Australian horror drama film directed by Natalie Erica James and written by James and Christian White. The film follows Kay and her daughter Sam, portrayed by Emily Mortimer and Bella Heathcote, respectively, as they travel back to their childhood home after their mother and grandmother Edna, played by Robin Nevin, has been reported missing. On arrival, Kay and Sam find that the house has been locked from the inside and that parts of the walls upstairs are covered in black mold. The house is also covered in post-it notes containing reminders for Edna. After an unsuccessful search, Sam and Kay spend the night at Edna's house, where Kay has nightmares about a rotting corpse. This is later revealed to be Kay's great-grandfather, who died disturbed and demented all alone in the shack behind the house. The next morning, Edna reappears from the woods barefoot and covered in mold-like bruises. She seemingly has no recollection of her disappearance and acts defensive whenever Kay or Sam ask her questions about her health or her whereabouts. Kay attributes this to her mother's worsening dementia, and Kay proposes to move Edna into a care home, much to Sam's dismay. Instead, she proposes that she will move in with her grandmother herself. Edna's sanity, however, begins to rapidly fluctuate, and her moods alternate from warm and caring to cold and violent. Kay, moreover, catches her talking to herself or some unseen entity, and she seems convinced that Kay and Sam are conspiring against her. She moreover has developed a hatred and distrust for the stained glass window in the hall, which was taken from the old shack and seems to be the source of the black mold. Through conversations with neighbor Jamie, Sam learns that Edna is a danger to herself and others, and that she had previously locked Jamie in a closet for several hours during a game of hide and seek. Sam investigates the closet, which appears to be a gateway into a mold-infested maze-like version of the house, and she promptly becomes lost. Edna meanwhile takes a turn for the worst and begins to pick and carve at her bruise while she is bathing. Kay tries to stop her, but this turns Edna's ire towards her, and she chases Kay into the crawl space with Sam. Together they manage to subdue and knock out the zombie-like Edna by knocking her over the head with a pipe. Just as they are about to leave her family home for good, Kay notices a note saying, "I am loved." Kay, unable to leave her mother behind, she picks her up and puts her to bed, where she and Sam lay next to her until she peacefully falls asleep. The film ends with Sam discovering a bruise on Kay's back, similar to the one on Edna's chest.
Yes, thank you so much for that summary.
You're welcome. I hope I did the previous summaries justice.
Definitely, you have a wonderful reading voice.
Thank you. So do you. That's why you usually do it.
Well, it's quite hard to do the summary for this because, as you know, quite a few of the movies that we didn't give a great review, it seems to be doing two things at the same time, resulting into a half-baked film.
Yeah, definitely. It tries to, there's this point where the movie just sort of separates into two separate movies, and that's the part where Sam gets lost in the sort of mold house and Kay trying to wrangle Edna into not stabbing herself or Kay.
Yeah.
And neither really work out the way they want. You could have done one or the other and it probably would have been fine, but now you just have two separate short films running next to each other.
I think this is one of those films where you can very clearly see what they were trying to do.
Oh, for sure.
And I think what they were trying to do, and I think probably what we were expecting that the film was going to do when we saw the trailer and we went into this, is that it would be this sort of A24-like film about what it is like to have dementia and what it's like to kind of lose yourself, and where your familiar surroundings like your house and your family are starting to appear more and more alien and dangerous to you. But it can never really do this because it has made the decision early on that Edna is not the protagonist.
No, and even much more so, she is the antagonist, or she is the source of dread, which is frankly a little offensive.
I find that really uncomfortable, especially she quite literally becomes dehumanized at the end.
Yeah,
she becomes this kind of horror, like really Halloween monster at some point.
Yeah, like this flesh demon.
Where she's just like crawling on all fours and chasing after them. And I find that really offensive. Like, you know, people that suffer from dementia are still people. That shouldn't be a hot take for me to say right now. And it really clashes then with the ending of the film, where they try to take it back and be like, even if she seems like, you know, a scary Halloween flesh monster, she's still my mother and I need to take care of her. Which I think it's to end this film on the note where it's like, you know, even if my mother is kind of losing her sense of who she is, I'll never lose my idea of her.
Yeah, what she means to me.
Yeah. And I'll be there for her and I'll take care of her. And I think that's a really nice message. But you can't really marry that to then also having the mother literally like trying to kill them.
Yeah.
As like looking like Freddy Krueger.
And then they smash her over the head with a fucking pipe. Yeah.
Looking literally like Miss Kirsch from It.
Yeah, exactly. And like the things where she has the horror crawl like on all fours and she snaps her leg back into place for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very, very disjointing to watch. Mm-hmm. And I think you nailed on the head by saying that Kay and Sam shouldn't have been the protagonists in this. Because I think it would have been much nicer if you just had the same ending, roughly, where they embrace her in her form.
Yeah.
But then it's been Edna that's been living through a house of horrors where she's being antagonized by all these spirits. Yeah. And by the end, Edna sort of lets herself be embraced by these spirits and then it's revealed, oh, these are actually just my daughter and my granddaughter who've been trying to help me all along. And that would have been way stronger. But now you just got this thing like, oh, now that we've beaten the shit out of mom, now she's nice.
Yeah.
Stay the fuck down, mother. I'm trying to take care of you.
Oh, can you imagine though the film where, for instance, it's Edna and she thinks her husband has gone missing.
Yeah.
But he's just no longer with her.
Yeah.
And it's just her and there's these invaders in her house and she's trying to like fight them off or something.
And she's convinced that they've kidnapped him or something.
And they have this reveal and you can do the I'm thinking of ending things thing where she changes age throughout the film and the house looks different in every scene. Yeah. You can even throw a little bit of WandaVision in there, you know?
Yeah. Also reminds me, and I would just say it like this, of the film The Others.
Yes, yeah.
Which is an amazing horror film, which we'll probably cover at some point. Which, okay, we're just going to spoil it because it's like a 26 movie, I think.
Yeah, if you don't want to hear this, like skip ahead like a minute or something.
Skip a few minutes ahead, yeah. So The Others is a film with Charlize Theron, I think, who lives in a big mansion with her kids. And they're being haunted, like things being banged around, people, children crying and stuff, people laughing. And then there's this scene where they hide in the cupboard for the spirits, and then there's this huge jump scare where a woman bangs into the cupboard. It's like, get out of here. And then it turns out that they are actually the ghosts, and the noise they've been hearing is the family that actually lives in the house that's trying to exorcise them.
Yeah.
And that was such an awesome reveal. That's such an awesome movie. And if you sort of marry that and the I'm thinking of ending things thing, and put that all together, that would have made such a strong film. Because clearly this film lets itself be inspired by certain films, especially, I think, Hereditary.
Yeah.
Very literally. And I think if the name wouldn't have been taken, this film would have been called Hereditary. Probably. And I think if you want to make a film like this, and you let yourself be inspired by films that already exist, then broaden your horizon a little bit and really try to make this so that it's more of a, so that's more of an accurate representation of what it's like for Edna and not what it's like for Kay and Sam, because that's weird.
And there's no reason for Kay and Sam to Because at the end of the film, they do kind of this reveal where it's like, oh, all of the scary supernatural things that have been happening were just Edna going through her worsening dementia. There's no reason for Sam and Kay to experience that in any supernatural way.
No.
There's no reason for them to become disoriented in the house.
No.
Like, their mother can seem alien from them, their grandmother.
Yeah.
But there's no reason for the surroundings to do that. Unless you want to take the very literal, very boring explanation, which is that it's actually all about a haunted window.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely the worst takeaway you can have from this film.
Yeah.
Because that's really boring.
Because then you run into the hereditary problem again, you know? Where the supernatural explanation is the not interesting explanation. Yeah. I hate that you said... you said like 15 minutes into the movie, like, oh, the solution is going to be that they smash the window. And it wasn't. But the fact that was a possibility bugged me so much. It was like, oh, they're going to smash that goddamn window.
But if it had been that, like, that could have also been an interesting film where everyone is like, no, Mom, you have dementia, and that's why you see these things, and that's why you forget things, and you see people in the house. And then at the end we find out, no, it was all true. She doesn't have dementia.
Yeah.
But there's something supernatural going on and has to do with the window.
Yeah.
And then it would have been a story about how we often kind of dismiss the elderly because we think, oh, you're old and your mind isn't there anymore. So, hush, hush, take your pills. And that could have been interesting too.
Yeah.
And then we could have this like really cool badass shots where Edna kind of takes charge, like I can see like the lady with she has like a gun, on her back, and like she's like, okay, kids, take a knife, we're gonna take down the boogeyman in the house,
Yeah.
And then she's like, I never liked this fucking window, and she just shoots it,
Yeah, could have been very Australian.
Yeah, and then it would have been more like a horror, maybe even slightly dark comedy kind of vibe. That would have been so cool as well. Like, it's a really rich concept, and I think they realized it and wanted to do all of it.
Yeah.
And then it just became a bit of nothing.
We have a bit of a cluster bang.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially what you said, the section with with Sam going through the hallways bugged me, because that is so very blatantly a visual representation of what's going on in Edna's head. Just getting lost within the same hallway of your own house, but surrounded by all these like boxes full of memories and shit, like pictures and notes and stuff. And
nothing is where you think it should be.
Yeah, nothing where you think it should be. You can't get out, and you just keep arriving at the same point. And I'm like, okay, this is clearly what you're going for, but why is Sam doing this?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
And then it kind of undercuts that because Kay ends up there sort of accidentally, and then they immediately bust out.
Yeah.
So then there's like, okay, so this was, it's just kind of a vanity shot.
Yeah. But also it implies that it's real?
Yeah.
Like, how does that work?
It's real, but at the end they go the route of like, no, it's not real.
Yeah.
It's just a representation of what's going on with Edna and what's going to happen to Kay and what is going to happen to Sam, but it's your duty as a child to, be there for your parent when they turn into a Halloween monster.
Yeah. And I mean, if my mum or my dad were to turn into one of those porch witches, then I would take care of them,
Of course, yeah.
I could imagine that my parents, when they get to that age, would just sit on their porch and grab kids' hands when they try to get candy.
It's so weird. Why? Yeah. Oh yeah, the ones that if you walk past, you just go. Yeah, exactly. Oh my god, no, it's really weird.
It's so wonky.
And if you do take that sort of like literal explanation, like, okay, let's go back to the message of the film, which we both were really conflicted about, because it is trying to do this very wholesome family first thing where it's like, your mom's going to turn into a Halloween monster, and that's she will appear alien to you and it will frighten you, but it's still your mom. And you have this responsibility to take care of it. You even say, like, she changed your nappies and now you change hers, right?
Yeah, that's the saying. Yeah.
And then Kay basically resigns herself to this haunted mansion, mold-infested mansion, to take care of her mum.
Yeah.
Out of that, like, duty towards her.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sam does the same thing, and it's even implied like, oh, it's starting already kind of with Kay with the bruise.
Yeah.
But like they frame it in like kind of a happy end, like, you know, they have each other. But that really doesn't gel with how horrible you've made the house look and how horrible and dehumanized Edna became and like frightening.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think, you know, halfway through the film we get to see the care home, which looks very nice.
Very nice.
And it wasn't like, you know, I'm sure there are a bunch of institutions like that really aren't nice and that need to be regulated more, and that you know, need more funding and need to be checked more often, because elder abuse does happen in certain institutions.
Oh, definitely.
But this, clearly, that wasn't what they were going for. It wasn't like, oh, this is a really bad institution. It looked really nice. She had a really nice room. They were even like, we offer workshops and classes so she can continue to, you know, grow and learn stuff and stimulate her brain. And she will have friends here. And it seemed really nice. And it was even closer to Kay's home.
Yeah, it was in Melbourne. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, why was that the bad ending? Because to me, it still feels like she should have just gone. She could have gone there, and then Kay and Sam could have visited her more regularly.
Yeah.
Rather than basically saying, no, you have this responsibility, this duty to uproot your own life, to live in the haunted mansion with your porch witch mom. Just kind of slowly becoming one yourself. And then somewhere along the line, Sam has to get, you know, the child that'll do the thing for her.
Yeah, it's so weird because it's not like... That's the thing. Because they frame Edna to be mostly mentally sound and in perfect physical condition. Perfect physical condition. Like, she doesn't even... Like, apparently the actress is actually like 78 or something.
She doesn't look like that.
No, she looks a few years over 60 at most.
She looks great. She does not look like someone who is, you know...
No. Which, no, that's fine. Movie's got a movie, that's okay. But... It's not like, oh, you know, you have to resign to the fact that you have become useless, you know, that you have become a shell of yourself. It's more like, hey, you can't be trusted with knives anymore. You can't get up the stairs anymore. Let's put you in a facility where you can still do your own thing, still be your own person, but somebody else cuts the bread for you. Somebody else walks you up the stairs, or there's no stairs, you know?
Yeah, and instead of you being in this big house alone, there's other people that you could, you know, form a community with. And she hates the house. Like, this isn't a movie about like Edna being like, I really don't want to leave my house because I love it here. Like, she at multiple occasions says, I really hate this house. I hate the window. I hate that I'm here all alone.
Yeah.
She doesn't like it there. So it's very strange that they're going for this angle, like the care home was absolutely the worst option for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also not maybe the best message that you want to give to people, because I think a lot of people don't have the luxury to uproot their life and to become basically 24/7 nurses for their parents, because let's not underestimate what an intense task that is, you know?
No, that is basically an unpaid job on top of your own life.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Like, there's a reason why this is a profession, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And you said this when we were watching it the other day, that this is a thing that more films do, sort of saying that putting your family member into a specialized care home is the bad option. And we've, to mention a specific example, we've the music film by
There's
Sia.
a lot wrong with that. We won't go into that. But just specifically that at some point they're like, maybe we could find a home for music, because the protagonist isn't really in a realistic position to take care of her.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think she has a house, has a apartment or anything. And they go to the facility, and I think what they're going for that it is boring, but it's unstimulating, which for someone who gets really overstimulated like music is exactly what she needs.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's the family doesn't abandon each other. And it's not abandoning. Like, you don't abandon your parents if you move out of the house, do you?
No, because, what you said, like, you can still visit them. You can still be involved in how much care they're given, you know? And there's a difference also between just a nursing home and a facility, you know?
Yeah.
You can also just be put into what's basically housing with other old folks, where you still sort of just live there and do your own stuff.
And there's just
somebody who
there is staff on that property.
Yeah, exactly.
And they check in on you like once or twice a day, and for the rest, it actually, I think, helps you stay independent
for longer. Yeah, and then when that doesn't not an option anymore, you can move to sort of specialized care, or maybe on like a closed facility.
Yeah.
You know, and also what I now realize is Edna is sad because she doesn't want to be in the house, but she had never even consulted about this. You know.
No.
And in that sense, she's right about Sam and Kay sort of quote-unquote conspiring behind her back because they're just making decisions about her that don't involve her, you know? And you can say, oh, well, but she's not mentally capable of rationalizing that decision anymore and sort of being part of that discussion. But I think she is.
I think she is too. Yeah, like, because she definitely is right until the movie decides she needs to be a Halloween monster.
Yeah.
Like, that is not a gradual descent. Like, that is kind of like from one scene to the other.
Yeah.
I mean, they do build up to it, but it's like we use the word fluctuate in the summary for a reason.
Yeah, but fluctuate also because it just sort of whiplashes you back and forth. You
know?
And it establishes so many things it doesn't do anything with, you know? Like the candle thing never comes up really because Edna has this hobby of carving candles. Sort of she peels the side of candles and sort of curls and sort of look like flowers, you know?
Yeah, I guess it's just that's their way of establishing she has a knife.
Yeah, and that then suddenly turns into, she's cut her hand once, and that's weird.
I didn't see the ending. Perhaps it was how they strip away her skin at the end, and then she becomes a little demon baby granny.
Yeah, she becomes like sort of, she's got these baby hairs, and she has sort of this darkened skin underneath. Sort of.
I didn't look when this was happening because I'm not good with body horror. It just makes me queasy. So
yeah, I shan't describe it, but I can tell you that it doesn't mirror the candle thing.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's. I think we could go on and on about the ending and kind of what the film is trying to do, but let's move on to maybe another topic.
Yeah, I mentioned Hereditary a little before this, and you said A24 in the beginning, and I feel that whoever made this clearly loves and appreciates A24 films and has seen a few. To the point where they have let themselves be inspired a little too much, like to the point where they use the same font for like titles and credits and stuff, like the Robert Eggers font, I like to call it, you know. And clearly, like these wide shots of the house and just how the house looks, and the panning shots to the stained glass window, which like this colorful sort of schematic representation of a small house, which is clearly sort of this Ari Aster-esque imagery of like the little yellow house in Midsommar and the little tree house in Hereditary. And these just fucking weird shots of listening to Kay talk on the phone through a sort of foggy window for no reason. Yeah. And these really weird camera angles where Kay is talking to Edna.
Yeah, let's go into this. So I think it's completely fine for the film or the cinematography, to be more precise, to be inspired by other like really popular horror films. But I think when like one of my favorite shots, and I do it a few times in Midsommar, is where you see someone talking and you see the other person in the mirror.
Yeah.
Because it very well visualizes how they are talking, but they're not really seeing each other. There's some distance between them. It's usually Christian and Danny. And
it's sort of opposed also, yeah.
And I do a few of those kind of shots in Hereditary, in Relic.
Yes. For example, when Kay is talking to Edna and she's like playing the piano or some stuff. She's sitting in the living room. And Sam is in that scene as well when Kay walks in. But then for some reason they choose to film it in such an angle that Sam is never in the shot, even though she does also mingle in the conversation. Like it's like from behind the door or like over Edna's shoulder, but so that Edna's head blocks Sam out of the shot. And that would have made sense if this film was shot from Edna's point of view.
Yes.
Because then you can be having a conversation with Kay and completely forget that Sam is also there. You know, that would make sense. But now, because it is Kay getting frustrated with Edna and confronting her from her point of view, it is really weird that Sam is visually taken out of that moment.
Yeah. And can you see Edna even? In my memory, you can't see anyone's face.
Yeah, you can see Edna with like...
sort of, right?
Sort of like poking behind the door. Or, like it's sort of this... They try to do a reverse shot where you can only see the one person, but they do it from really weird distances.
I think you can see Kay right?
Yeah,
you can
you
see
can.
her.
Yeah.
And again, that kind of shows that it's from Kay's perspective.
Yeah.
But it's weird that she's not seeing the other people. Unless you really want to go into it, well, this is about Kay not listening to Edna, not taking Sam's wishes into account. But that's not really what the film is about.
No.
It's not, because then we're back at, okay, is this a film about people dismissing the elderly?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not really.
No.
Because they are absolutely right at every step of the way that Edna is a danger to herself and others. The end, you know?
Yeah.
I think the shot that I hated the most was the one with the foggy window, where basically you see Kay having a phone conversation, but you don't see her because she's behind like a foggy window, and just for no reason. Because it's not like Edna's looking at her and like not seeing her, or that's sort of the idea we're supposed to get from that scene. It's just a cool shot, quote unquote.
Yeah, exactly. And it could have been a really cool scene if, again, this was from the perspective of Edna, and she sees Kay through a foggy window on the phone, and then we go back to Kay and we see into the window is actually clear, but she can't remember what Kay looks like in that moment or who Kay is.
Yeah, stuff like that. You could have really played around with it, but they don't, because this isn't from Edna's perspective at any point.
No.
This is Kay's film.
Also really hated the nightmare sequence with the corpse, because that doesn't really come back. Because, basically the sequence is you zoom in on the little shack, and then the door opens by itself, which again, like this sort of light wooden shack with clear Ari Aster imagery there, and goes through the door, and there's this sort of moldy, keyword there, bed, and then there's flies everywhere, you know, and then there's a blackened corpse in the corner, not unlike the attic scene in Hereditary. And then you zoom in, and then it's just this nondescript sort of blackened corpse, and then Kay wakes up, and then it happens again, the exact same scene, but this time the corpse is gone, and there's just this sort of moldy stain on the floor in the shape of a person, and you think like, so this shape of a person is sort of, and then the mold in the house you presume is also going to take that shape, but it doesn't. So it's basically these non-consequential scenes.
Yeah, because all it really does is that the first time it's the great-grandfather, and the second time you see the corpse fall to the floor and become mold, it's Edna.
Yeah, exactly.
So all it's really doing is saying, oh, well, their great-grandfather suffered from dementia, and Edna does too.
Yeah. Because
that's something that will happen generation on generation.
It's almost like this is a hereditary condition.
And that's all eventually, because it is, at first you do think, oh, and is it like the ghost of that great-grandfather that has infested the window, which was his window, which put into the house. Have like a whole conversation about how Edna never wanted that window into the house because it makes her uncomfortable. And you're like, oh, are we going the literal explanation where sort of his infected ghost is, ruining the house and driving Edna mad?
And that's who she's talking to.
Yeah, and that isn't the thing. It really is just there to throw you off, I suppose, and to make you think, yes, he suffered from dementia, and now Edna does too, and probably Kay will also one day, and then probably Sam also one day. And that was clear from everything else you did.
Yeah.
We didn't, so the only other reason I can think is just to be spoopy.
Yeah, exactly. Those sort of... in the worst way, those shots of like the shack, like all the filler shots that you have of like scary stuff just remind me of like a fucking Slipknot video clip. It's just sort of eerie sounds, scary images, some flashing lights. The only other thing is missing is like 9 guys in masks and boiler suits, and you've got a Slipknot clip going on, you know?
There are quite a few scenes where you just see like a dark shadow in the background, and it reminded me like, how in Hill House they do that?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, spot the ghosts, and that's just kind of a little Easter egg to make you see like, oh, there's actually a bunch of ghosts in the house. But, in Hill House, like the fact that there's ghosts clearly has payoff, and here it doesn't. Like, this just happens, and then later it's kind of implied, oh, this dark shape is Edna, which doesn't make sense.
No. There is this really cool shot, though, or this really, neat little scene where Edna is sleepwalking through the house, and Kay finds her, and she thinks she's talking to Edna's back.
Oh, that was a cool shot.
And then she flicks her hair out of her face, and actually she was facing her the whole time. I thought that was neat.
That was neat.
Yeah.
And I think if we want to go to the next thing that we want to talk about, which is just, is this scary? Because I think these scenes are all meant to make this a horror film, right?
Yes.
And probably Sam's run through the maze is very horror-like. I didn't find it scary at any point. I didn't find this a scary film because I think those scenes feel so disjointed from the main storyline, which is just about a family dealing with the fact that the matriarch is suffering from dementia.
Mm-hmm.
So it just took me out, and I need like a second to recalibrate. And like, oh yeah, horror stuff. Okay, very nice. Thank you very much. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, but thank you. And I think a lot of the horror in the main plot line fully depends on this assumption that we think old women are scary just by themselves.
Yes.
Which I do not.
No.
Because it's just an older woman. Like, there's nothing inherently scary about that, but clearly this film thinks older women and naked older women are just an old naked woman should make you afraid. And no, I do not fear what I potentially look like in 60 years,
Yeah, and also I think the movie kind of subconsciously admits that it's not that threatening, because it only really becomes threatening to the main characters when she has a knife.
Yeah.
Like, clearly it's just so sad that she sort of waddles the house naked and doesn't know where she is. But it's only scary for the protagonist once she actually has a fucking knife, and that makes sense,
Yeah, there's a lot of these scenes where I feel like the movie wants you as the viewer to think it's scary, but it's not scary for the protagonists.
No.
Like, they're going through the house, and the house is kind of spooky, but if that's your childhood home, that shouldn't scare you. So I don't really, but for some reason, Kay and Sam kind of go through the house like, oh, scary house,
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is where your nan lives. This is where you grew up. Why are you scared of the corridor?
Yeah, exactly.
Clearly, with the music and the lighting, this is meant to be scary for us, but I need to be able to be on the same page as the protagonist for that to be scary.
Yeah, and that's why I thought I made it really tense for myself. Because I hate jump scares, and this felt like a film that was just going to do a dick jump scare at some point. That was just going to do a pop-out jump scare for no reason. Like, they would just be going around the house or something, and they were like, oh, let me get some biscuits. And then they would be like, open a cupboard. So like, yeah, Edna is in the cupboards. And I was like, I was looking for the biscuits. And then she pops out of the cupboard, and that's the jump scare, Just something stupid, And it just felt like that the whole time, because it's like, oh, they have a little music stick, and then the music drops, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, and then you count 2 seconds, and then the jump scare happens, Cookie cutter stuff.
I almost wish they did that.
Yeah.
Because I think this film kind of commits the worst act you can do as a film, which is that it was just boring.
Yeah.
It's really tame, it's really boring, and at least if they've gone for like some cheap shenanigans with like jump scares, at least I would have been like paying attention. Like, and I don't get why this film has such high reviews, because I feel like I had more fun watching Malevolent, which kind of bombed.
The bar was low. Yeah, because I read it, like, I saw a little review that they sort of put on the poster, and it said, I don't think another horror movie is going to make me cry like this year.
This is not a horror film.
It's not a horror film, and it's not a very sad film either. Like, this is not going to make you... Okay, like, your feelings are valid, but this is not a very emotional crackdown film, you know?
Because I think what they're going for is that you're emotional at the end, where you see like the 3 generations lying next to each other, and there's sort of this sadness because, probably you will have to take care of your parent one day, even though, they take care of you, and you kind of wish that that's a dynamic you have for the rest of your lives. But at some point you'll probably have to take care of your parent, and that's sad, but it's also nice in a way that you can repay him like that. And I think that's what they're going for, like that's the emotional core. But we've just had like 15 minutes of Edna being a Halloween monster and being bonked on the head with a pipe. So, I'm sorry, I'm not quite there yet to like go back to no, this is actually very emotional.
Yeah.
It's just weird. And I saw some of the reviews that said like, oh, this is a horror film for people who don't like horror films. And I think, maybe they should have just cut all the horror stuff and just make it like a drama film.
Yeah. Okay, say you take that, you keep the ending, because I think that can be effective.
Yeah.
And then instead of the whole horror film thing, like you said, it's just Kay and Sam taking care of Edna for as long as they can, but Edna gets worse and worse. And every time like Kay bathes her, she strips away a little layer of Edna physically, you know, with the bruise and everything. And then by the end, all that's left is the sort of blackened core of Edna, and then you have the final scene where they lay down and it's okay now, Edna's dead, we have done all we could, you know, and then get the
Sam
bruise.
sees the bruise,
and then the cycle continues, and that's really tragic, really heavy, but still a really good emotional core to that film.
Yeah. That wouldn't have been a movie that I would have necessarily enjoyed personally, because I don't really watch this kind of films, but I think that could have been effective.
Yeah.
I think that could have been effective if they just cut all the horror stuff and just did a drama film. I think it would have been effective if it had been a really effective horror film if it had been from Edna's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would have been a really fun horror comedy if it had been from Edna's perspective. And it turns out there is actually a demon and we get badass Granny who's going to beat the demon's ass.
Yeah.
I really want to watch that film. I want a badass Granny kicks a demon's ass film. And no more. I don't ever want to watch a film anymore that thinks naked grandma is scary. It's not scary. She might get cold.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah, she might get pneumonia.
Yeah. Give that woman a shawl.
A blanket.
Some pants. Yeah.
Come on, Granny, let's have some tea. Yeah, so no, not a fan of Relic. Sort of also, I've not seen this film, but it reminded me what I've seen from trailers is The Taking of Deborah Logan, I think it's called. The premise is, I think, that two film students come to her house and actually monitor her worsening dementia. But I think also there's some demonic possession involved in that one, like literally, because that's why it's called The Taking. And maybe that does it better. I think we'd have to see that one, but you know, it just feels like this has already been done a little bit, you know, and this didn't do it effectively, so...
And what I kept saying is just, this film really felt like it did something.
Yeah.
Which is a bit mean-spirited, but I'm not entirely convinced that it's not the case.
Yeah, they thought they were being clever.
Yeah. Oh well. So that's Relic. Join us next time when we will pan a critically acclaimed film or praise a film that bombed and slashed. So
yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us, even though we've been a little bit irregular with our updates.
Yeah, it's a very busy time. We try to do this as regular as possible, so thank you for sticking around.
We might move to a bi-weekly schedule, because I think that will be a bit easier for us to do.
Yeah.
But anyway, follow us on our socials. Thank you for listening on this on YouTube if you are. Thank you for listening to this on Spotify if you are.
Yeah, be sure to spread the word. You know, if you know any people that might be interested, please share it wherever you can. You know, we love to get the message out to more people. And we'd love to hear your input, so... Yeah, recommend us stuff. Yeah, tell us what you thought of this film if you've seen it. Maybe tell us if we should watch Taking of Deborah Logan, see if that did it better. And hopefully join us again for the next one. Until then... I've been Grace. And I've been Wouter. And you've been slashed.